Hi there, my name is Cassia Streb, and I'm one of the co-founders of Music for Your Inbox. Today we're going to have an artist chat with Jennifer Bewerse and Sharon Chohi Kim, who are two of our artists that we're presenting this month. So I'm just going to take a moment and invite them.
Okay, you're both winning. This is
Wow,
already a massive success. Sorry, I like
we made it.
speechless by how quick this was. I was all in vamping mode. So anyhow, I'd like to introduce you both to the world again. We've got Jennifer Bewerse on my bottom right. I don't know what it is for the rest of the world. And we have Chohi Kim on the bottom left. And they worked together this month to create Unstuckness Practice, which is our video coming out on the 20th of the month. But of course, tickets are available till the 15th. So I wanted to set the scene a little bit to let people know of how we started to work on this collaboration. So Jen, of course, is the other co-founder of Music for Your Inbox. And we approached Chohi asking if she could make something out of thin air for us and for our platform. And she said yes, which was fantastic. And then she continued to say yes over and over and kept presenting or developing this piece, not just for us, but in fact, we were able to see a live version of it. We have the video coming out, and then at the very end, we want to ask her where she's headed next. So this is kind of us jumping into a stream, and quite literally in Shohi's case, to talk about Unstuckness Practice. So we just knew that we loved your work as a performer, and we knew that you were starting to compose, Chohi, and so we thought we want to be the first ones to hear what these compositions are like. And then, of course, Jen is a video artist, and so she was able to storyboard certain sections of the film and work very closely with Chohi to come up with the imagery and sort of the narrative thread of this piece. I will say, if I miscredit someone for something, it's not, it's just because it's a nest. Honestly, we've just worked so much on this together and had all these conversations. So if you say, actually, that was my idea, I will not be offended in any way. Um, so yeah, Chohi, do you mind kind of starting and explaining to people how you came to start composing this Unstuckness Practice work?
Yeah. So let's see where to start. Um, People have seen, hopefully, the description. This piece comes out of my own personal unstuckness practice that I've been doing on my own and developing it over the past year. And this comes out of unnumbing my physical body from trauma, specifically sexual trauma, um, and also unsticking my voice. Um, I've been feeling, I've been doing a lot of performing in the past 10 years, and I've just been I found myself becoming a chameleon, just trying to fit into so perfectly what other people wanted me to be as a performer. And of course, perfection doesn't exist. And I found myself losing my vocal identity. As well as just my identity as Chohi, performing in a very white Western European opera world. But that kind of chameleonizing, becoming a chameleon, uh, it's been there forever. I have memories of being in preschool and having a very different lunch than my classmates. A teacher pulling out, I don't know if you know those, they're like these little yogurt. They sell them at
Yes,
Costco now.
yes, super delicious.
And yeah. And, teacher being like, what is this? I had like a Sanrio Hello Kitty lunch box, and everyone else had a brown paper bag. And just always feeling othered and always feeling like I needed to uh, morph into my surroundings, um, as survival, right? And my family did this. A lot of immigrant families do this. A lot of people of color have done this. And I found myself doing it so much in the opera world as survival. And just during the pandemic, I just kind of felt like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now that I have all this time to think about this, I'm like, who am I? What is my voice? I need to go back to the basics. I need to go back to improvising and just letting organic sounds come out of me and just saying yes to them, and finding my voice again. And I'm still on that path, and it's been so rewarding, really hard. And same thing with my body, having felt very numb for so long. I've been kind of exploring animal behaviors. And I didn't make this up. This comes from therapy and their known trauma release exercises, shaking, holding poses until your body's trembling. And then just kind of also exploring myself as a baby, discovering senses in a new way, feeling my feet on the floor, making baby sounds, asking myself, why am I making sounds? Why do I even speak? Why do I move? Just kind of starting from the bottom up. And last May, I made a very different Unstuckness Practice piece. I think I kind of imagine the title Unstuckness Practice becoming the title for lots of future projects. I think it's a continual practice, obviously. So last May, we did kind of a live version, similar musical motifs were in there as in this film. And that was kind of based around this like idea of non-religious spirituality and cycling through some vocalizations and movements to achieve an unstuckness for that hour, for that day. Kind of have to do it again and again. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it really, I think that was the performance, Jen and I were both there. So it really helped to kind of frame the starting off point for this film. And I mean, you did so many different parts of this film. It's hard to, I mean, you designed the costume and you made the costume and then you wore the costume and you did the piece. And that's just one tiny portion of it. So I'd like to kind of bring Jen in right now to sort of explain. Now that's sort of, you've taken us beautifully, right, to the point where Jen and you and I, but mostly you two, started to talk about more in depth of how exactly this particular film that we're releasing with Music for Your Inbox came to be. So, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about that path as the filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we got the email first of all from Chohi about like, here's what I think I want to do, and just being like, really cheesy, but like chills, like excited about like exploring, getting to help her explore that, and like getting to witness like that kind of art being made. And we had a lot of meetings to kind of like figure out where this was going and when it was going to happen. And the way I remember it, we had like Chohi had these really beautiful ideas there were 3 sections to the piece, and they were about kind of the feeling of, and correct me if I get this kind of off, but the kind of the feeling of being stuck to begin, and then the middle section of just this kind of awakening, abyss, chaos, a lot of the kind of shaking that kind of goes into getting unstuck, and then a kind of section about healing and moving on from that chaos. And we had she had these really beautiful ideas for how the first section would look, kind of like these very objectified, almost small, body parts making these uncomfortable movements, like they feel a little bit trapped and almost like they are controlled by puppet strings. And that the middle section would involve this gesture of shaking and connecting with nature. And the third section was kind of this like, we'll see, right? And so we kind of developed the first two with visuals while Chohi was making the music, and we kind of moved in parallel. And then we got a draft of the music from Chohi, and I got to do one of my favorite things, which was just listen to her piece over and over again and let like images just kind of swim in my head. And for the third section, I proposed a series of images to Chohi, and then she helped refine them. And it was very much collaborative, and I felt very much like I was contributing what I saw in my head and seeing if I could align it with Chohi's vision. And we have gone back and forth a bunch and finding like the right moments and editing things. And I'm just really proud of how it's come out, and excited that I got to kind of, I don't know, be the kind of have these visual like contributions to music that I just think is so special, and like a project that's really, really beautiful.
That's great. I agree. I think it's really beautiful. I think we the three of us come from a more sound background, so we tend to talk about the visuals a lot because to us that's like bright shiny object. But if we could talk about the music too for a second, because it's quite amazing what you've done, Chohi. It's not like it's not a person singing a solo for 15 minutes and then it's over. There's a ton of other instruments and there's a lot of layers and stuff. And I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about your process of composing and putting all of this together, because you, in the classical European opera world, you sing possibly in a chorus or a solo. So polyphony isn't so much your job, but then all of a sudden it was kind of amazing when we're like, can you write us a piece? And then it was, or not us a piece, but can we present one of your pieces? And then all of a sudden it's like this you wrote an orchestra piece by yourself, for yourself. And I was just, I'm curious about like your textures and the layers and sort of how you kind of your process of putting all of that together.
Yeah, I am a vocalist, but before I was a vocalist, I was a pianist. So I have a classical pianist. So I did so much of that before singing, but I don't write from a harmonic progression. I approach it different ways. Some of the vocal parts in this piece, they came from mimicking processes and patterns in nature and cycles, or textures like dripping clouds. And I kind of imagine what that would feel like and look like and sound like. And then I try to create the sound. So I kind of imagine it first, and then I try whatever I can to make it. Some of a different part where I wrote these kind of vocal lines that go up and down, I imagined shooting stars that fell, twinkling stars, and just try to create that with the voice. Some of the electronic stuff, I'm so new to electronics, but it's like, oh, this is so me. Like, this is how I can make the sounds I want, that I imagine. I during the pandemic, I bought a Moog Matriarch and semi-analog synth, and I was so afraid of it, I didn't play it for a whole year. and then all of a sudden, I had all these projects to do, and then broke into it, and it's just been so fun. So for the second shaking section, I was imagining this energy of something in the multiverse that hadn't moved in a million years, just moved a little bit, whatever that energy is, or the ground just kind of opening up and shaking with me, an earthquake. So I tried to create that sound. I I think I'm close to it, but I don't know. I'm so close to this piece right now. It's really hard for me to
Oh yeah.
to talk about it.
It's a brand new baby. No, I get it.
Yes, the new baby. Let's see, other parts. Oh my God, I'm so jet lagged right now. I'm somewhere between
No,
dreaming
it's okay.
and coffee. I just
It's
got
okay,
back
'cause,
from France
well,
yesterday.
oh right. Yeah, this is your first day in this time zone.
Yeah,
For a
yeah.
while. Well,
Oh,
I think what I really found, like in the audio mixing process, was when we finally saw the stems, because I had been listening to the composite sound. And then I would read, the name of things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a synth? These were chimes? This was, it's because in my mind it was all just, you had like knit a fabric together, and everything was so beautifully connected that I wasn't able to necessarily parse out, like, oh well, this is the bell bit, and this, I mean, obviously I could tell there's no chimes in water, like I am musically literate, but there were parts that, exactly like you're saying, you were thinking of these gestures, you're thinking really gesturally, and then you're using whatever tool is necessary to get you there. And there's and it creates a really unique sonic environment that's very much you, because it's sort of serving the purpose. It actually feels the opposite of somebody who just got a Moog and is like, woo, look what I can do. It really feels the opposite of that. It feels like someone who's like, what is exactly the sound I want right now? Oh, I want this guy and this little thing and this and the combination of that.
yeah.
So
There's this new toy.
across.
Thank you. There's this new toy that I've been playing with. So I have the Moog, and another new toy is this giant metal bowl. I call it a kimchi bowl, or a mandu making bowl, which is like Korean dumplings. But it's this giant metal bowl and a hydrophone, underwater mic. And I've been just kind of making some sounds with that bowl. And I love it because, first of all, if there's this feeling of a sound not having a beginning or an end, but it's just a continual circular motion of sound. And then sometimes the sound, it sounds like a dinosaur, although I don't know what a dinosaur sounds like, but a creature. Yeah. And sometimes it sounds like 10 voices screaming painfully. And there's so much, I'm still exploring it, but there are some of those sounds in the piece, which I was very excited that it worked with this piece.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's really cohesive, and works really well together. I was thinking about, now, like, that we talked about the sound and stuff and the visuals, and I'm curious, like, Jen, when you were listening to that third kind of unknown section, you ended up coming, you did close your eyes and imagine, and you saw some very cool things, and you've always got such cool techniques, but at the same time, it's very similar to Chohi's method, where it doesn't feel like a bag of tricks. It feels like, oh yeah, this is the thing that needs to happen now. And I'm curious to know a bit about, like, specifically that section where you use some specific filmic tools. If you could talk a little bit about what you were inspired by and what you ended up doing.
Yeah. So I remember listening, and I think of the piece a lot in like terms of minutes and seconds, because that's how I've been like living in it. I remember there's this moment in the abyss that right before we get to the third section in this chaos, and I remember like feeling it in my stomach and actually like tearing up. It's like so embodied and visceral, this beautiful moment, and then we like go into the third section. And so I was thinking a lot about the journeys of different things through the movie. So I knew, like, for example, we had these body parts in the beginning that had been kind of like a little bit like objectified and like made into puppets. And so I was thinking about them and like, where are they now? And can we look at them and treat and for lack of a better word, like heal them or address them, and like not just leave them in that place where we put them in the beginning of the film. And I was also thinking about different, I think actually Chohi and I think really similarly about sound and music in that like when Chohi you were describing the bowl, it's like this feeling along with the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was listening, I was feeling those feelings in my body. So for
Mm.
example, the feeling of being like submerged and coming up again was a really like a sensation I felt in my body. And so we created imagery that was being submerged. Chohi was very gracious to like let us put her in water. And so
I love being in water.
yes. Well, and the beautiful thing about that, so I had this, image of being submerged and coming up again, and I sent that to Chohi, and we both realized that water was important to the storytelling and the kind of healing and cleansing properties of water. And Chohi had used the sounds of water in the towards the end in this bowl. So that feeling of submerging and coming up and this imagery of kind of going into the water and coming out, then like taught us in a way, or like revealed, oh, maybe we need to develop this idea of water. So when the body parts come back, there's like dripping water in that too. So something that was really special for me was there's this combination of like pre-planned imagery that we captured and developed, and kind of imagined imagery that emerged from the sensations of the music. And then also like learning from that imagined and planned imagery and discovering like what else it felt like the film like needed to say, or like what other important like characters were emerging, like water. We discovered that there was this like floral motif that came through it. And Chohi, maybe you want to tell this story. There's a flower in this fabric costume you made, and we ended up introducing flowers into the third section. And then you discovered like some significance about flowers with your like name. And do you remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I had this blanket, this white, kind of, it looks a little satiny, blanket with these baby pink kind of roses on them. And I decided to make a shirt, a top out of it. And I liked this blanket because, first of all, it's a blanket. So yeah, it just says so much being a blanket. And then the look of it, it looked kind of like a baby blanket, but also bridal. And also Korean. It's hard to describe why, but my sister was also like, yeah, it looks Korean. I was like, why is that? I'm not sure. But so I used that blanket, and then the flower motif came up, and I just kind of told Jen like, oh, my name, I was named religiously Sharon. It's like the rose of Sharon. It's from the Bible, but it's this rose, and it's ironic that it's from the Bible because I grew up in a Christian home, in a Christian community, and came out of it and found my own spirituality with that. So there is an unstuckness there too.
Yeah. And so it's like this, I just remember being really inspired throughout by like this kind of, it felt like a constant exchange where these images would emerge, we'd kind of feedback on each other about them and learn from them and develop them. So something that really excites me when I watch the film back is that I feel like there are all these kind of there's the big story of like being stuck, getting unstuck, and healing. And then there are these small stories that come to like this printed flower that becomes petals, that like becomes real, and this water that kind of washes through things. So, and that kind of thing excites me from a film perspective, because I feel like every time you watch through, you like learn something else about like threads that are being kind of woven through the imagery and through the film.
Yeah. And I think it's important that the last section is healing and not healed. And
Yeah.
I don't like offer this answer, and
No.
it's just because it doesn't work like that. So it's almost just simply kind of about being present in the moment and just perhaps walking. And
And that being like, that's sort of, I feel like where the piece carried you to at this point. Have you thought about kind of the next Unstuckness? Like what kind of, would it be live, or are you feeling more like exploring more electronic music or a different film, or do you sort of see the future of this series?
I do see a future. Nothing specific right now. I'm swimming in this one right now. But there's a show that I'm doing with Elana Mann and Corey Fogel January at Human Resources, and we touch upon similar topics and finding ideas and healing ideas from nature. And we're using Ilana's instruments, her horn instruments, with a hand covering the mouth, and the 6-mouthed giant horn. We're going to have 6 singers in it, and it should be really, really fun and really good.
Wow, that sounds like a really exciting project, actually. I really want to go to
Can't
that. Wait. I love all the names you said and all the ideas.
Yes.
And then for you, Jen, are you thinking about some other video projects and then your horizon for you that you're, I don't know, it just feels like each of these things kind of informs the next one. And I can already see, I'm thinking back to Sarah Belle Reid's video that you released in September of last year. And then there's elements of that I can see like informing your work here. And I'm curious if you are sort of seeing a next, or what is next.
Yeah, I don't have a film next plan. I do feel like that there's been this series of kind of really beautiful stepping stones where I get these, it's been an opportunity to really learn some new skills, like the power of kind of color grading, which is like really technical sounding, but basically is like taking the camera color and like amplifying it in ways that shape the storytelling, and learning new techniques to kind of just get my mind's eye out into reality. So yeah, this project has felt as like kind of a continuum of this like path that I'm really excited about. And I have a project that I'm like incorporating film into in like kind of this early baby stages, a project with a friend. It's kind of an unfinished project that she passed away, and kind of completing it without her, and that will involve some film. And that is in its like earliest infant stages. But it's just been really rewarding to kind of like gather more tools for getting the things in my head out into like the world in a way that matches better what's in my head.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, the three of us have all trained for decades on musical things, and so we are quite fluent at hearing a sound in our heads and having that come through musically, either instrument or voice. But then to have to go back to the sort of like me Tarzan, you Jane, like level of artistic communication with a brand new medium, it's pretty intimidating. So it's impressive how you've kind of just kept chipping away at it to realize something is. There's some pretty fancy things in Joey's movie, if I can say so myself. There's a lot of ideas that we had that just felt really far-fetched, and then Jen was like, I think I know how to do that. And that was a key element. I mean, in addition to her own great ideas, but it's one thing to sit in a production meeting and say like, I think Chohi should do her practice in every single location in Southern California. And then Jen's like, actually, that's not
Yeah,
and lucky.
problem solver.
And then luckily Chohi like hikes a lot too, so we could be like, here's
Well, yeah.
that was an epic hiking day ourselves. So
yeah, lots of fun and adventure. I would love for people to sign up and get the postcard pairing by Helen Jo, who we interviewed on the weekend.
Who's amazing. I just love it so much. I loved what she did.
Yeah, and she made it while watching an early draft of the film, which is like, I mean, what an honor to have someone else look at things you've been working on and make their own work in response to it.
I mean, I'm so honored. And I love the image because it just so much about it is Korean, but it doesn't scream it in this like exoticized way that sometimes Asian art can be in many mediums. But it just was so nuanced, and all the feelings that I got from it, it just reminded me of like my sister and me sitting in a Korean spa we used to go all the time growing up, and back then it was so trendy. It was a family thing to do, and just sitting there sweating it out and being uncomfortable, and I just loved it so much. So thank you, Helen.
Yeah. Actually, somebody write a question that I can read.
Yeah.
It says, do y'all feel the increase of technology puts art at an advantage or disadvantage? That's a awesome question. Thank you for Cho1.life, I think. Sorry, it's disappearing into the graphics of Chohi's shirt. Did you want to go first, Chohi, and see what you think? About whether you think that technology puts art at an advantage or a disadvantage?
Both, yes, no.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've touched on some of the advantages already when you were mentioning that you're able to explore, this Moog synthesizer and all the sounds that are there. I mean, that's clearly not new technology. Analog synthesizers have been around for a minute, but I think that you're talking about getting more into electronic music and recording. All the fact that you recorded everything yourself too. I mean, you're actually the audio engineer for this. And so if that technology weren't so readily available in kind of a consumer friendly version, I don't know that would have happened. I think attention spans are shrinking. So that's certainly affecting our art making practices. We're tending to make shorter things to keep up with shorter attention spans. What did you think, Jen, about the role of technology?
I think artists have always used technology, the latest technology. And I think that sometimes we can associate technology with like electronics or computers, but since artists have been making art, they've been using the latest technology. And I think that artists are like maybe really well positioned to like see the potential in technology in a way that maybe technicians aren't, because a big part of our training is like possibility seeking. And so I think that it's part of our toolbox, and it can be used to advantage, or it can feel stifling. And it's more about like the spectrum of relationships that we create with technology than it is about one or the other. And so I think for some artists, I think technology can feel like, oh my God, do I really have to post to social media? Because like it's stifling and hampers my practice, right? Like that could be one example of a relationship. And then there could be like, oh, I have software on my computer that lets me like take the thing from my head and like make it happen. And that feels like a huge advantage, and that I can look at a YouTube video and learn how to do something that maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would have had to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for someone to teach me how to do. So I don't know. I think that often anything that feels like a binary is really a spectrum, and it's like about where you fall on that spectrum and your relationship to things in that spectrum. So that's my
Yeah, those are good points, and they're following up by mentioning that are there artists out there that will be overlooked since technology costs might be high compared to artists out in the world? And yes, for sure. I mean, a lot of the way that we're reaching people is digitally. I mean, we're on Instagram talking about this from phones that we purchased, on headphones we purchased. There are obviously going to be some barriers to that for certain artists, for sure. I think, are we talking about like tech, like necessarily electronic tech, or is it sort of innovation within? I mean, I know there's a lot of like different kinds of paintbrushes and stuff, but those all cost money and stuff. So I think, yeah, those are kind of issues to address as well, right? To be talking about. I mean, one thing we love about Music for Your Inbox as a platform is that it is incredibly affordable and it can go to people and they don't have to have excellent Wi-Fi to stream or download things. So there are sort of ways of, it's the same double-edged sword. You're definitely going to miss people, but you're obviously going to reach more people. I think Music for Your Inbox reaches more people than the experimental music that Jen and I were producing together before we launched this project. So yeah, there's always some good and some bad.
Another question.
I agree with that comment, Chohi.
Well, read it out loud.
You're doing great things. Oh, it's saying shout out to Chohi. You're doing great things.
Thank you.
And we couldn't agree more. Sounds great.
And there's a question for Chohi too. Were you thinking about the film while writing the music, or was it two separate processes conceptually for you?
Because I wrote some music for the first live version of Unstuckness, there were some motifs that were already written that I added to the film music. And then when I actually wrote and made the music for the film, I was thinking about the film. I was thinking about 3 sections. And because the shaking was such a big part of the second section, I was trying to create that sound that I wanted for the shaking. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really impressive to get all of the footage of the things that you shot, Chohi. That was like a physical like endurance feat. I mean, it was really impressive to see like all the different locations that you found and how like you really picked the places that worked really well, and then to have to do your whole practice every single day. I can only imagine what that experience must have been like.
Well, Nick was carrying all the equipment, so shout out to Nick.
Oh, right, camera operator.
Nick was filming, so yeah. Shout out to Nick for that. My poor feet. I shot a bunch of shots, and then I was like, I should have just worn shoes, but now I can't go back. So yeah, but it was good. Yeah, and just the act of shaking itself. Because when I first started to film those shots, we were on a camping trip and I hadn't done it in a while. And it took a while. It took a few rounds of shaking to really get loose. Like, it was hard. It's like, wait, how do I do it? My body feels so stiff. But it really helped doing it a million times. And it does take a lot of energy.
Yeah, tremendous amount of energy. Yeah, no, it's easy.
Well, my dog does it all day, so her.
Oh. So someone's asking for a word of advice for up and coming artists. Jen, do you want to go first?
Oh, just general word of advice?
Yeah, up and coming artists. It's tough, eh?
Okay, a word of advice for up and coming artists is, I mean, I'm out, this is going to come out as a mess, but hopefully makes sense. But I think that our training leaves a trace, and it can leave positive traces and also like negative traces. I use this term for myself that's been really helpful lately called like music damage. Like, I've learned a lot and I'm really good. And I also have like some music damage from like choosing my instrument at 4th grade and deciding I was going to be a professional, whatever, very young, and like having these really intense relationships with teachers that most other professions don't have, right? So, I guess my kind of like messy advice for up and coming artists would be to like keep your eyes open around you and know that there are like other options for operating that maybe your like training or your path hasn't like revealed yet. And if anything seems like absolute or a rule or like something you're not supposed to do or absolutely supposed to do, take it as like a grain of salt and like look around you for, because there's probably another art form that sees it really differently. And there are like things you can borrow from a lot of practices that can become like a new composite that feels like more real for your own practice. I don't know if that made sense, but that's where I am right now. So
No, I think it does. You know, because as you're talking, I was thinking about, you know, my own training, because of course that's what's in my head. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We tend to kind of obsess and get tunnel vision and say, well, we were told this is supposed to be the hardest thing, and this is the hardest thing. And it's like, well, okay, but also...
Well, I remember learning that like if you did anything else, you couldn't be a serious musician. That like if you played another instrument, or if you like, I remember being told if you could see yourself doing anything else, just do that because you'll never make it as a musician because it's too hard. And for a long time that held me back from like pursuing other things I was interested in, like film and like visual mediums. And I'm really glad to be kind of unlearning that and being like, I'm making the art I'm supposed to make. And if someone thinks that makes me less serious, more, that's their business.
Yeah, I don't have time for that. I'm too busy making art.
They're going to handle that. So
yeah. Well, I can vouch. I played with you yesterday. She can still play the cello. It's working just fine. Chohi, did you have anything you wanted to add for up and coming artists, or are you feeling the weight of the jet lag?
Both, yes. Well, just there, I think there's this idea in lots of cultures where like you have to be here in order for you to succeed. Like once you make it here, you have succeeded. And that's just not true. Just then you'll miss out on everything and every experience in your whole life. So it's just every project, big or small, whatever that means, is now, and it is, and that's where you're supposed to be. And I've learned that because I've used to feel the other way, and it's just miserable. You just miss out on everything. Yeah, relationships, you know, the experience of being there and doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, this is exciting. I'm so glad people were feeling inspired to ask us some questions. I'm imagining everyone gathered around with their little lunch bags because it's like 12:15. No. Type your questions. It's great. Yeah, someone's apologizing for asking questions. No, it's great. It's fun. It's best to have a conversation with the whole community.
I think I am. It is catching up to me, the jet lag, though.
You're like, it's like officially 9:15 at night in France.
I'm leaning into dreaming now.
Well, thank you so much for carving out this little time to chat with us, Chohi, on the day one of jet lag. If people would like to see a non-jet lag version of you in their inbox on the 20th of the month, she looks amazing, sounds amazing. They can sign up at musicforyourinbox.com by the 15th of this month, and then we'll get their addresses and address the postcards and put them in the mail, and then the email arrives on the 20th. So it's like a little art package delivered right to you. Thanks, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye.